Hey there, hello. Welcome back. My name is Chrissy, and today I am inside because it is pouring rain. It is wet. It is so wet outside. Um, the ducks and the chickens where we had them has all flooded, and so we've let them out into the pasture. There is just so much rain, and I thought, well, and as you can probably hear, I've had the flu and it's gone through the house. We've had quite a lot of days where we just have been doing the bare essentials, getting through. Feels like it's been like that for a couple of weeks. So, and I don't know, maybe you guys are the same if you're in America and it's winter over here, and it definitely seems to be that season of people getting sick, and yeah, there seems to be a lot of that going on around here anyway, with nearby friends and things. But I really wanted to at least be able to pop on and say hello. It's been quite a few days since I put up a video, and I just wanted to update you all. I have, during this last little bit of time because there actually was about 3 days where I was pretty much just directing traffic from the couch. I was not quite down and out, but I was very, very low on energy and doing the bare minimum. So thankfully I have a wonderful family, and the children always step up and help when they are needed. So the older ones milked for me and made dinners and took care of the little ones. The medium-sized boys do a great job of that. The big ones did the baking and the milking. So yeah, I had lots of help, which is great. But as I was recovering, I spent quite a bit of time just working on my laptop on the couch, so that I could at least feel like I was doing something productive. And I spent quite a bit of time on my blog. Now, I don't know that I've mentioned it a terrible lot here, but I do have a blog. At the moment, it's called thehomestead.com. And I actually started it years ago, sort of the first little online venture that I ever had, and it now has a lot of articles on there. It is not fancy or flash because technology is not my strong suit, but I have been updating articles on there and writing new articles and things as I've been laying on the couch recovering. So one of the things that I was thinking about as I lay there was that it's almost 2 years since our family of 9 moved to America from Australia. If you're new here, that is where we come from. And we moved here a couple of years ago almost to be closer to my husband's family, who are all American, and to help take care of his parents. Anyway, I was just pondering over the last couple of years and all that has been. And I know I've talked a fair bit on here about our struggles to, adjust and settle into a new country, and our homesickness, and it's been very real. But I think it's time that I also talked a bit more about the things that we love here. And there are quite a lot. I mean, yes, I don't think you can make a move that monumental without there being struggle. The children and I had never even visited America before we got on that plane with our 16 suitcases and flew over the ocean. It was nothing more than something we had heard about. So it was a very big culture shock, and something that we all had to just kind of find our way, and for some of us, I think it's been harder than others, but there's been lots of amazing things. And so I took a bit of time and sat and thought about 10 things that we really love about America. Now, I felt kind of torn doing this. I really did, because part of me felt like, well, I don't want that to be misunderstood in any way. And there's probably no way of me avoiding that, honestly. So hopefully it won't be, but you know, it is what it is. I love my homeland. I love Australia deeply, and I always will, and I miss it greatly. But I think it's really good and healthy and helpful for us as a family to look and say, hey, what is there here that we really love, that we are grateful for, that has blessed us? And so that's what this was about. So I wrote, I will put the link below to the full article where I sort of go into a lot of depth about all of this, but I thought I would just run over it real quick here with you. And the things, now I have just pressed a button. Here we go. The things that we love about America. And I'm sure there's more than this, but this is the 10 that I came up with. So one of the first ones, and I know I have mentioned this before, is living with 4 seasons. That is just, it's been like a childhood dream. I think maybe because I love reading and I love stories and so many books and poems. I love poetry, and so many of those things speak to the seasons. And I remember seeing as a child beautiful illustrations of the different seasons and what that looked like. You know, maybe the autumn colors and beautiful oranges and reds, or then the beauty of winter and the bright spring. And I never really understood exactly what that meant, because now where I was born was in southern New South Wales in Australia, and there are definitely more, you could say there are more seasons down there than there are in Queensland, which is where I lived the majority of my life, all my adult life, where I was married and had children. All my children have ever known is Queensland, and it is much more a tropical climate. And so really, there are not 4 seasons in Queensland. There's sort of really, really hot, slightly less hot, and then really nice and pleasant. The winters over there are so mild, and the winter is probably the most beautiful time of year to me. But it doesn't change much visually. So like the temperature shifts, and in both of those, all those times of years, you have heat and you have, you have rain, and then you have dry periods, but visually not a lot shifts. If you live out west, beyond a certain point, everything's kind of pretty brown until you have the wet season, and then all the rains come and everything comes alive and is beautiful and green, and then dies back again. So there are changes, but they're not what you would say is a normal 4-season change. So it has just been delightful to be able to watch that and experience it and see visually everything change before your eyes as the world slowly shifts from one season to another. Okay, so the second one I was thinking about was the culture of respect here. Now, when I say 10 things we love about America, I guess technically what I'm saying is 10 things we love about Texas, because we're in East Texas and we have traveled a tiny bit since we got here. So we have been to South Carolina, Tennessee, and we kind of went through the other states. So we've been through North Carolina, through Arkansas, through Alabama, Louisiana, but we haven't ever really stopped there. So our experience really is just with the South. We haven't traveled to other parts of America. And so when I say 10 things we love about America, I don't know. I don't know if this applies to all of America. In fact, I know some of these definitely don't apply to all of America, but this is the part that we have experienced. So there is a deep culture of respect here in Texas, in East Texas, and we really did see a very similar sort of thing when we were in Tennessee and South Carolina. The way people speak, even the whole yes sir, yes ma'am thing, which was a big adjustment for us and kind of tricky to get used to, especially for our children. But I really love what that says about the culture and how that people honor those in authority, and they honor, you know, if you're speaking to anyone, whether you know them or not, you're going to say yes ma'am and yes sir, and you're going to, you know, just the general manners that everyone is treated with. There seems to be a very great level of respect for elders here, and it just permeates every facet of society, everywhere you go. The way people converse, the way people interact in everything from retail to business to churches to social events. It's just across the board, and it really is really lovely to see, and something that we appreciate. Yeah, enough said. So that's number 2. Number 3, which this one, personal freedom and liberty. Now, I know some of my Aussie friends and family, if they were to ever watch this, would say, well, hey, we live in a free country too, which is technically true. It is technically true. But having lived there and having lived here, there is a very big difference between the two. And I think one of the things that has happened in my homeland is a great entanglement with red tape and regulations on everything. And I know, like, I've said that to some Americans and they've been like, well, we think we have a lot of it here. But and again, like, this probably varies enormously from state to state, but our experience is all I can speak to. Coming from Australia to Texas, there are a lot more personal liberties and freedoms here. And that's a bit of a give and take. Like, at first, it felt really a bit like the Wild West and almost intimidated me. In fact, I say it probably really did intimidate me, and I found it just a little off-putting, and I was always a little bit on edge, like, oh, what's going to happen next? You know, like, our house was broken into, the first rental we had here, before we moved to this property. And there's a lot of things you just see around here that are very different, that we wouldn't see back home. And a lot of that might be was initially a bit alarming. Like, I'll give you an example, is we would be riding down the highway and I would see motorbikes go past, and the person riding the motorbike would be in shorts and a t-shirt, a pair of sneakers, no helmet, like, and going 80 miles an hour, which is like 128 kilometers an hour of the highway. And I'm thinking, oh my word, that is so dangerous. And how are they allowed to do that? And my first response was, how are they doing that? But there is no requirement. There is no legal requirement to wear a helmet. And whereas in Australia, you would never do that, because number one, it's illegal. Like, you have to have a helmet on. I guess that's just a teeny example of how it's just very different. It's just very, very different. Now, the downside of that is maybe the roads are a little bit more dangerous, and that's probably due to a lot of factors. Like, there's way more people on the road. But people are making their own choices about what they do rather than being stipulated to. And I think that seems to play out across the board, with housing, with vehicles, just in a lot of areas. And I can see that there's a positive and a negative to that. But I would say the positives have to outweigh the negatives for me and what we've witnessed. I think that's something that I think every person ought to take responsibility for their decisions and not be so reliant on governmental figures telling them what they can and can't do. We really love that about living here. The people have been super friendly, warm, welcoming, and very polite. I mean, it was noticeable. You walk in the supermarket or a car park or just down the street, or any interaction you have with random strangers, they will nod their head to you and say hello and smile and try to get out of your way. And I don't know, there's just it's very different. And I'm not wanting this to sound like Aussies are rude, but I don't know, like, unless you can experience what I have experienced, I don't know how else to kind of convey that to you. But in Australia, maybe here's a little picture. In Australia, in a supermarket, you're walking down the aisles and you're getting things off the shelves, right? In the supermarket, you're pretty much just going to have your eye on your trolley, or your buggy, as they call it here, and what you're doing, unless you happen to come across someone you know. You don't really make eye contact with other people generally. Sometimes you might, especially if you're in a little country town, you might. But people generally just kind of stick to themselves a bit more, I feel like. Whereas here, and it's not like you get in big conversations with anyone, but there's just this really sort of open, friendly manner that people have. Yeah, I don't know. It is actually really difficult to sort of, I'm imagining I'm sitting here trying to explain this to some of my friends back home, and I don't know, like, you would just have to walk down the aisle with me in the supermarket to be like, oh wow, yeah, they really are very friendly, and they really, like, you know, you walk down with your trolley and it'll be like, you know, because it gets crowded in those aisles, and always, I have never found this not to be so. The other person who you might be passing will be like, I'm sorry, and trying to get out of your way. And I don't know, they're just super, like, manners, I think, are a really big deal here. Maybe that's what it is. Manners are a really big deal. Maybe they're not such a big deal in Australia. I don't know. Number 5 was the new flora and fauna that we have been able to see here. And honestly, that's just been so exciting. I remember the first time we saw a squirrel, man, we all went nuts. Titus was the first one to see, and he came, we was at the Airbnb when we first landed in Houston. He was at the back yard playing. He came running in the house, mommy, I saw a squirrel. And we all ran out there, and there was this cute little squirrel up in the tree. So exciting. And there's been deer and armadillo and less exciting things like skunks, but raccoons, and the birds are so different. They sound different. They look different. They're kind of smaller, but they're very pretty and very beautiful bird songs. The trees, the forest itself, everything looks totally different here. Smells different, looks different, sounds different. So that has been something that I guess we kind of knew, you know, this is the other side of the world. It's going to look different, but to actually be able to day to day experience that and really kind of soak it in and take lots of moments to just absorb it, and just the sheer joy and wonder of being in the Lord's world that's totally different to the one you grew up in, is just really a treat. And I think, you know, there's not many people that get that opportunity to see what life is like on the other side of the world. So yeah, that's definitely on the list. Okay, number 6. All right, this one's a bit funny. This was a vote by my boys. I said, hey, I was halfway through doing this, and I said, hey kids, what's your favorite thing about America? And the teenage boys were in the kitchen, and they piped up and said, the basketball, the girls, the big trucks, and muscle cars. And I was like, what? But so basketball has been a love of our families from the beginning. My husband loves basketball, played it at college, and really just, it's been something he's passionate about, always has been. So the boys played a little basketball in Australia, but it is not anywhere near as big there as it is here. And certainly in rural and regional areas, the opportunities aren't as great, which is where we lived in Australia. We lived in the country, and we, most of the sport that is played in rural Australia would be things like tennis, cricket, and footy, rugby league. So it's not, basketball was there, but there were no organized events, if that makes sense, for the kids. And whereas here, there's heaps of it and heaps of opportunities. So the boys have loved that and been able to participate in that. I won't go into all the other things they said, although there just are. And again, this comes down to different cultures, but there's a lot of really big trucks here that, and a lot of modifications made to vehicles, which in Australia happens far less because of regulation. Like, you're not allowed to put like super wide tires on your big truck. Over a certain amount, they don't let you. So whereas here, it's just like lots of modifications, lots of like jacked up chassis and beefed up cars and super tinted windows. Again, something you're not allowed to do in Australia. So it's, it's just different. It's super different. And I guess the boys think all that, or the big cars and the fast cars, a lot of muscle cars, and even some of their friends drive muscle cars. So they're loving it. They're loving that part. Number 7 is the Christian culture. So again, my faith is really important to me and to my husband, and has been foundational in our family. We come from a country where the majority of the country, and I would say the culture, I think it's a fair statement to say the culture of Australia as a society is very humanistic, and oftentimes completely atheist. And so I didn't really think too much about that, right? It was just a given to me that, well, everyone makes their choice of what they're going to believe. And yes, there's Christianity, and the world is often very opposed to that. So it was truly a shock to land in a country and in a area where Christianity is not only normalized but celebrated and kind of permeates every area of life here. And by what I mean by that is it's in, so how can I say this? So when we first got here and we walked into a Walmart, which for the Aussies watching is kind of, I guess a big W would be like one of the closest comparisons. And right at the front of Walmart, or like right before you get to the checkouts in, say, Big W, there's all these shelves full of Bibles. And we looked at them and we're like, okay, that's weird. There's like Bibles right down the front of the store, and this is just a secular store. And then we realized that was not uncommon. Like, that would be in a lot of places you would go, would have a little Bible stand with Bibles on it, or Christian books or devotionals or whatever. And then we realized that many stores that you go into will be playing gospel music. There'll be scriptures up around, maybe on the front door. And it is very, very common that at basketball games, in workplaces, it's happened in my husband's workplace multiple times, in homeschool get-togethers, and even the county fair, the local county fair. It is incredibly common and normal for at those events, like actual organized official events, for people to be called together to prayer before or after the event, or that kind of thing. And that, I was amazed, because that is not allowed. That just does not happen in Australia. There's a very big segregation between your faith life or your personal beliefs and things that would happen either in retail business, workplace, anything like that. So that, I don't think I realized, like it just never even occurred to me that how I would feel about that, but it came as almost a big relief. It was like, oh, I don't think I realized how much of a load it actually is on you when it is just very, very normal that your faith is offensive or is something you have to keep sort of to your private life for the majority of the time. It's not something that is, there's just this separation that happens. Whereas here it doesn't. It's across the board. And of course, that doesn't mean that everyone here is a Christian. It doesn't mean that at all. But it does impact the culture and the way the culture thinks and the way the culture acts. And that has been super refreshing. Okay, so I'm going to kind of blend a couple of these together. I feel like this is, in America, there's you hear it called the land of opportunity, and I really feel like that is valid. And then one of the next points I had was the homesteading and homeschooling opportunities that are here that we did not have in Australia. And I think they're kind of tied together, and a lot of it has to do with the population density. America is big. So Australia is almost as big land mass wise as America. Did I say that the right way? Australia is almost as big as America. But population density, they're in Texas, which is like just down here in America, this tiny little, well, it's a big state, but like as far as the whole of the continent goes, there are more people in Texas than there are in all of Australia. So there are 31 million people, I believe, in Texas. There are 26 million in Australia, in the entire country. So when you look at what that does to every little area you live in and the sheer number of people that are here in America, I think that explains why there is so many more opportunities and resources and contacts and things available to you in probably whatever topic of interest you have. For us, it's homesteading and homeschooling that we are very invested in, but that might be, different for a different person, but it certainly is something that we don't have in Australia. So that's something we appreciate. And I think that's part of why there are so many opportunities here. And maybe perhaps the whole personal liberty and freedom ties into that as well. They're just less restrictions and less things tying you down and preventing you from doing things. But yeah. Anyway, so that's 2. Now, I had this listed as number 8, but I'm going to mention it last here because I think this is probably one of the biggest things and possibly has taken a little while for us to, I think I saw this at the beginning of, oh, that'll be amazing. But then when you're in the thick of it, it can kind of be a little overwhelming. But I'm really starting to appreciate the benefit and the blessing of having our family fully immersed and experiencing a completely different culture. Now, it's even funny for me to say that because I think for many, many years, I really did think there's not a great deal of difference between Australia and America. They're both Western countries. They're both very sort of modern and progressive, and there's probably not a whole, different history, different beginnings, but not a whole heap of difference, especially now with the media and everything. But, I was just really wrong. I just was really wrong. I remember thinking to myself, I've been married into an American family for 20 years. This is when we first came here. I understand Americans. I've got this. This will be fine. Well, clearly I didn't because I have been shocked at how different it is, just so different, and not bad, but very, very different. on just about any level you can imagine. So to step into and live in and immerse yourself in a completely different culture is very, very, it just grows you. I don't know how else to put it, but it grows you. It expands your horizons. It has stretched all of us in ways we didn't know it was going to stretch us. But it has taught us things about ourselves, about our family, about our country that we didn't know, and certainly about this country that we didn't know. And I just don't think we have yet even fully appreciated the value of that. Those are lessons that I don't think, you can learn any other way other than by going through those, at times, often hard times. Like the first 12 months that we were here, I honestly feel like I just spent a lot of my time bamboozled and just trying to understand a new way of living, a new way of doing things, new rules for things, and new words for things. It just was very, very different. I have a new respect for immigrants that I certainly didn't have before. And I remember thinking, like, intellectually having the thought that must be difficult, because in Australia we had, especially after World War II, there was a lot of immigrants from like Europe, mainly from Europe, but a lot of people came and settled in Australia. And I just have an understanding that I didn't have of really what sacrifices were required and what adjustments were required to make that work. And I see that, yes, it's been hard, but it's been really worthwhile. It's been very good for our family in ways that we probably won't understand for a good while yet, I would imagine, because after all, it hasn't been that long. It has only been almost 2 years. So that was my thoughts as I lay on the couch recovering from the horrible flu. But I really do think it's important to sort of reflect and think about these things, because there are hard days. And when we can look back and go, you know what, like, I can just see the fingerprints of God all over this move. And there have been so many good things that we would never have experienced if we had have stayed where it was safe and normal and you're comfortable, what we were used to. So yeah, just thought I would share that with you guys. Now, if you want to hear or see any more of my thoughts on that, I did go into a lot more depth on the blog. So I'll put the link to that below. And if you want, you can head over there and subscribe to the email list. I am trying to be a little bit more organized at getting articles written. I love writing. It takes a lot, to me, it takes a lot more time to do that than to quickly turn on the camera. Even though when I first started this, I was like, oh wow, this is way harder than writing. But anyway, they're both things that I have, other ways that I have stretched myself this last couple of years. But I would love to know your thoughts. How many of you have, because not everyone moves overseas, but we all can look at our lives and say, well, I've had to make, some people have moved across the country. I know from things you guys have said to me, there are definitely people who have done that, but it can be other big life changes that can be really, I don't know, that can stretch you and can be hard, but it's good to look and say, well, what is the good that's come out of this? And for me, it just has made me even more grateful for the last couple of years and all that we have been able to see and do and experience as a family. All right, guys. Well, thanks for hanging around and being here with me. I certainly enjoy all the conversations we get to have in the chats and the comments. And I am sure the rain will stop eventually and I will be able to film again outside and in the kitchen when the household is all well again. All right, sunshine and raindrops, friends. Bye-bye.